welcome to Labor Talks. Today's special guest is Nick Weber. Nick serves as an organizer of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Local 953 here in Eau Claire. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You also serve on our executive board as an executive board member of the Greater West Central Area Labor Council.
That's correct, yeah.
And we're glad to have you there too.
Glad to be there.
For our viewers, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. So, as you said, I'm the union organizer for IBEW Local 953. And we'll get in a little bit more into that a little bit later. But about me, I'm a Rice Lake native, about an hour north here from Eau Claire, and a third-generation union member. Been a lifelong organizer, whether it's community or political or labor. Graduated from UW Eau Claire in 2018, and now we are back in the community, sparking conversations about the issues that matter. And this is why I'm so glad to be here with you to talk about some of the things going on in our community.
What was your degree in?
It was actually in foreign policy. So just in case the State Department calls, someday we'll be ready to serve at that point. But
and then I'll go with you because my degree is in foreign languages.
Excellent. So. I think we would be a match made in heaven, Laurie.
Can you tell us about IBEW 953?
Sure. So IBEW Local 953 is a 100-year organization as of last year. It was 1919 to 2019. Nice. So we've been in the community for a very long time. It actually started out with the trolley workers here in the city of Eau Claire and then expanded into a million other things. So overall, right now, we have about 1,600 to 1,700 members in our jurisdiction, which actually spans across 5 states. So it's Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa, and Illinois. So we have 953 members all in those 5 states, and then many more traveling throughout the country and things of that nature. Most of the sectors that we represent are utilities and power line construction, but we also have the pleasure of representing workers in the telecommunications field, tree trimming, and manufacturing as well.
Well, and Electrical Workers 14 is just south of town. How do you guys differ? So for our viewers, so they know, how do you differ from 14 as far as what their duties are?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, it's most important that we are both IBEW, right? So the best way that you can distinct and tell the difference between Local 14 and Local 953 is an inside and outside jurisdiction, right? So throughout our country and throughout the world, electrical infrastructure is everywhere, right? From the power generation all the way into you turning on the lights on at home, right? So everything that is outside a home or a business or inside a building structure is going to be Local 953, and anything inside a structure is going to be Local 14. So we represent workers that work at power generation facilities in multiple different ways of power generation, transmission lines, and then finally the distribution lines, how it gets to those structures. Everything after that is going to be Local 14.
So when they want to change it so that anybody doing wiring inside the house is a certified electrician, those would be 14.
That's correct, absolutely, yep.
And I would say that probably one of the biggest contracts for 953 is Excel.
That's correct. Yep. So out of our 16 to 1,700 members, and I say 16 to 1,700 because it varies based on some of the work that we have. If we have a big project, in our jurisdiction, we'll have more members. If we don't have as much work going on, it will, lessen for that time. So we have approximately 350 employees that work at Xcel Energy, which is a large chunk of our membership, but also if you put together all of our electric cooperatives, our manufacturing facility has a lot of people as well. So it is probably the largest group, not including our construction contractor members. But it's hard to say who they are working for because they're working for different contractors at any given time.
Well, and I know that IBEW 2150 out of Milwaukee has members way up here too, if they're linemen or tree cutters.
Correct. Yep. So there's especially those who work for We Energies. 2150 represents all the utility workers over at We Energies. And as you know, they have some work in infrastructure in the western part of the state as well. So
my father was a director for the electric co-op,
Mm-hmm.
where I grew up in central Wisconsin. And when we always lived in the country, and this is the first time in my life I've lived in a village. And when we moved into our village, I found out I couldn't go to the electric co-op, which is 2 blocks away from me. I had to use Excel. I have no problems with Excel, but
Yes.
being a electric co-op daughter,
Yes, I maybe gave you a little bit of a panic there for a
I'm
second.
like, wait a minute. But I know that they have a really nice active electric co-op in St. Croix County too.
Yes, absolutely. Those are some great members. I mean, all of our members are really great, and I think that it's a testament to the cooperative, and when these rural electric cooperatives started, just how they were based on, right? It's being able to provide reliable, safe energy to people in rural areas, and I think that our members know this as well as people in leadership positions. They understand what that means because it wasn't always something that was available.
Yes, I understand people have to have generators, but when you're running a dairy farm with 70 milking head and a milking parlor, you got to make sure you got electricity that runs it. So
The lights have to turn on.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely.
So, and keeping the bulk tank cold and
all
everything else.
the above.
And that's where your electric co-ops come in.
Yes.
As a union member, what types of concerns do you see union members facing today?
Right. So I would say that on whether it's the IBEW or any other union, I think that there's a certain sense of people that belong to unions understand that we're doing this for the welfare of their family and their community. That's the
Not
most
just them.
And that's the most important thing. And so I think that that's always at the forefront of every union member's mind. But more specifically, there's a couple of issues here that are presently happening. One of them, first, is there's a pretty concerted effort to take down what is the existing multi-employer pension plans. As we've known, there are a few pension plans out there that are nationwide under multi-employers and lots of union members underneath them that aren't doing so well. The IBEW, fortunately, does not have that problem right now. But some people don't know the distinction between a good, healthy multi-employer pension plan and one that's having trouble right now. So there's a pretty concerted effort in Washington, D.C. right now to kind of take apart the existing multi-employer pension plan as we see it, which is putting our members and everybody's members at risk.
And as someone in their mid-50s, I certainly wouldn't want to find out tomorrow my pension's gone.
And that's a reality for a lot of people right now, which is unfortunate. So that's why we are in support, and we want to thank our local legislators out in D.C. and being able to, in supporting the Bush-Lewis Act, a responsible multi-employer pension reform plan that helps those that are struggling and also is able to have a hands-off on healthy multi-employer plans. The second one here is, and something that is kind of near and dear to us, and especially me as an organizer, right? We have been seeing some alarming things coming out of the NLRB, which is the National Labor Relations Board. Some decisions on there
That are not on our side.
that are not on our side, and they're harmful not only to unions, but they're harmful to working people seeking to find better options for them and their families, right? So for an example here, the misclassification of employees and independent contractors. This is something that we're seeing this in the gig economy, and we're seeing this in kind of ways where employers may be able to get around being able to pay those benefits and doing those types of things, and it's leaving workers and their families vulnerable, right? With no health insurance, no sorts of protections of that nature. The second one here this is another one that's kind of personal for me. The NLRB just this past year ruled that employers are able to exclude union organizers from privately owned public places, right? So an example of this is, and this is what the decision came from, there was a union organizer that was working in a hospital, right? And that hospital had a cafeteria that was open to the public, right? We have seen these people and been to these hospitals before where anybody could come in, and sometimes they're really good for cheap lunches. Just a quick plug in there, right? So that union organizer was working and having conversations with employees in that public place that was owned privately, right? Which was something that was able to be done before the NLRB said you can exclude union organizers from these public places, which is an alarming thing, right? And not even in and of itself, but just the spirit of that decision is it's very obvious to us that we aren't welcome. These conversations aren't being welcomed by some employers. The third one, the big concern here is that there's another case from the NLRB, and this one was personal because it was an IBEW organizing campaign, right? The employer won the case by terminating an employee who was a vocal union organizer and supporter during the organizing campaign, even though it was agreed upon by the employer and the union that the reason why this person was fired and a pre-existing notion of why they were fired is because of their union support. That's scary. That is very scary, and that's something that we as union officials should be worried about, and also just the general membership and people that have yet to be organized into a collective bargaining agreement.
And a trend that I've seen too, with my husband being a machinist, is that a lot of companies now are switching to temp workers for up to 6 months before they can join the union.
Yes.
And if they find out that that worker is a pro-union person, they're one of the first ones that's asked to leave.
Absolutely. That we see this all the time, especially in manufacturing facilities, and it's alarming, and it's one of those things where it's something that we need to be working on collectively as a labor force, not just unions, but we need to be able to do this.
And as long as Wisconsin Manufacturing and Commerce Committee, Walker's old committee, is there, which is not pro-worker,
correct,
they're going to keep working with our non-worker friendly NLRB to continue to come up with more things.
Yes, and that is why this election is so important up in 2020. I don't want to talk too much about it here because we have members on all sides of the aisle here, and we respect everybody's decision. But at the end of the day, these are real consequences for the votes and the people that we put into office every single day. And they're behind the scenes, and they are talking to each other, and the result of that is firing an employee under the pretextual notion that they're a union supporter.
And we used to be one of the most progressive union labor states in the country, but
That's
Walker
correct.
took us back 50 years.
We led the way for a long time, and we're going to have to start from the beginning, essentially, again.
Now, I know that your local gives out scholarships. Can you tell me about them?
Yeah, I think that the best way that I can answer this is that we give out scholarships mostly to technical colleges in the area, in industry, for people that are going into the industry, right? So we have these scholarships available, and we are always looking and willing to explore additional opportunities when it comes to supporting students that are about to enter the field.
Get them into being journeyman type thing.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us about the apprenticeship programs
Yes.
at IBEW?
I'm very excited to talk about this here. So, IBEW Local 953, along with other local outside jurisdiction locals in a 7-state region, and don't quiz me on them right now. So we send our apprentices to what's called the Missouri Valley JATC. That's where they complete their apprenticeship process, right? So it's a 4-year, 7,000-hour, 7-step apprenticeship program, paid all the way through top-of-the-line industry wages around the country, and it's well respected in the industry. If you can become a journeyman through Missouri Valley JATC, people notice that, and employers notice that, right? So
in depth.
Absolutely. So what we're excited to announce here is that we are currently building a $13.5 million and 50,000 square foot brand new training facility in Indianola, Iowa, that is going to be replacing,
Missouri.
which is part of Missouri Valley, which will be replacing. We had some satellite offices in different places, but we're going to be consolidating now all onto our main campus in Iowa. So if you want state-of-the-art training, if anybody wants state-of-the-art training in a place that's a state-of-the-art facility, I would highly recommend it. We're all very excited about it. Our technical colleges are excited about it. Our high schools are excited about it. We're excited about it, and we're looking forward to unveiling that in the near future.
And if somebody would like to become an apprentice, how do they go about it?
Absolutely. So our process is very simple, right? Under Missouri Valley JATC, there are only a couple of requirements, right? You need to have a high school diploma or a GED, 18 years old, and with a CDL, right? So those are the only 3 requirements.
Which particular CDL, you know?
CDL Class A.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
Class A. There are things additionally that will help you throughout that process. There is an application process, it's easy, and then there is an interview process and things of that nature, right? So they're going to be looking at your past qualifications. You know, a big one is obviously if you have completed an electrical power distribution program or something of that nature, kind of how your grades were. Do you have any previous work in the industry? You know, things like that. You know, so but the 3 main things are 18, GED or high school,
And a
you know,
CDL.
equivalent, and a CDL, and you
can
are,
teach them the rest.
and we can,
Apprenticeship.
and we'd be happy to teach you the rest. So.
Now, do they actually work as they're going through the apprenticeship program
Correct.
as well?
Yep. So there's 2 parts of it too. That's going to be on the field, in the field training, right? You're going to be working alongside journeymen, our contractors that are going to teach you the best ways to do things and also the safest way to perform work. Additionally, onto that, you're going to have additional classroom time that you're going to have to be able to complete there as well. And your hours in the field are going to pretty much bring you through anything and everything that you will see out in the field, and we will make sure of that for you. You know, if you need to work on transmission lines for a few hours, then we have to do that. If you need to go on hot wires, then we're going to do that as well. But we're going to make sure that you complete this apprenticeship as quickly as possible, where you're going to be working as much as possible, so we can get you out in the field and doing, you know, and working on our infrastructure here in this country.
And pass their tests.
And pass their test, indeed.
Because it scares the bejesus out of a lot of people, them tests. you know?
Absolutely. And additionally to that, if something like an apprenticeship isn't necessarily for you, we have additional opportunities within our union as well. I mean, a great example here is our tree trimming and line clearance work that you don't have to have an apprenticeship for. It's a direct hire, you know, through our contractors here, a lot of on-the-job training here. And it's a great, you know, a great job with great pay and great benefits. Along with that, you know, our telecommunications contractors as well. You know, everybody knows here we are burying fiber optics like crazy in the state, which is great.
And we need them.
And we need them, and we need people to do them. So if that is something you're interested in as well, that's not part of our apprenticeship process here. That's more of an on-the-job training, but that it's another great way to get involved and have a good union job in an industry that's growing and sustainable for the future.
And with kids coming out of the military, when they've got some training in their jobs when they're in the military,
Yes.
is that helping them get into the apprenticeship programs?
Absolutely, 100%. We have a lot of former and active military members in our union, and we will make sure that everybody that is making decisions knows that, and because we value them that much.
I've got one of the nephews on the other side of the state.
Very good.
As a union organizer, what challenges are today's unions facing increasing their numbers? Like,
Yep.
how can they join a union? Or the thing that we always get, well, unions had their time. We don't need it anymore. How do we get around that?
I would say, well, first of all, I think we're proud, especially, and lucky in the utilities industry, that we have a strong union density in this industry, right? So it's one of those things where a lot of people in the electrical industry know the IBEW, they know about unions if they're not already a part of the union, which is good. That's a good thing. But on other parts of, where I look to organize pretty much anybody, right? And some of the things that I have found challenging in my work, and especially talking with manufacturing and people that may have not been introduced to unions or unionism in their lifetime, right? We're kind of seeing this gap, this knowledge gap of unions, because a lot of these people's parents weren't in unions anymore. The people that are entering the workforce right now, parents usually weren't in a union. Maybe their grandparents were, right? So there's a little bit of knowledge lost there on what the union can do for them, right? So
Forgot where they came from.
correct, and it's one of those things too where there's been multiple. I had conversations yesterday. I have conversations almost on a daily basis where the biggest struggle here is that we have to introduce the union back into these lives, right? We have to start from the beginning, and we already have the playbook for it, right? I mean, our founders and early people in unions, they had to introduce the idea and the benefits and kind of the spirit of what a union can do. And I think that we're at that point right now, where our manufacturing union density is at a point where I'm a union organizer and I show up to somebody's house and they have no idea what I'm talking about, right? So I think that that's probably the biggest challenge right now, is that we need to be intentional with communicating with workers that are future members of our unions, right? We don't want to call them non-union workers. Future active members of our unions, right? So that's the biggest challenge, but that's also our biggest opportunity, right? We have a lot of work to do, and I think that we can't be afraid to talk to everybody. And
I would imagine you're also hindered by the fact that our state went work, not welfare, and you've got the fair share, the people that look at their paycheck and say, well, there's this much money going over union dues, I don't really want to do that.
Right.
And to try to educate them about being a member.
That's
or a
correct.
Fair share member.
That's correct. And it's one of those things where I think that it's a double-edged sword here as well. I think that we need to be able to make that clear to those workers, but we as unions also need to be creating value every single day for our members. And I think that the combination of those two things is the recipe for success for high active membership within our unions.
Because we can't keep doing the same thing.
Right.
And expecting a different outcome.
Correct. We've seen this movie before, and I think it's time for us to realize that, we can be creating value every single day, and we need to prioritize creating value for our members.
And what made a difference for baby boomers is not the same thing as what's going to trip a trigger for a millennial.
That's correct.
Or the me generation. We got to figure out ways that it affects them, and they get involved.
Right. We need to be writing where people are reading. Right. That's the honest truth here. We can provide a lot of things, but we need to be providing what people need. Right. If we're not providing things that people care about, then we're not going to be very useful.
And they're not going to come to us.
Correct.
Do you feel that we have good representation for working families and retirees within our Wisconsin government?
I think that there are people in our Wisconsin government that work really hard every single day to fight for our interests, right? Governor and Lieutenant Governor are two great examples of that. Some of our local legislators have been excellent to work with in sharing concerns. On the other hand, there are some political realities in Madison that make it very hard for those things to get done. And I think we all know these things, the people that are listening to the special interests over the people that they represent, right? Sometimes what these elected officials fail to realize, that a lot of these people that they represent, and they may have voted for them, are union members, right? And so it's frustrating to see that sometimes, where there's a lot of moving parts in Madison. I think that there are some people that are very committed to the cause, but
beating their head against the wall.
They're beating their head against the wall. They're not able. It's one of those, and it's kind of sad to watch, right? And because we know that there is good intentions out there, and just the inability and the obstructionism that's going on in the Wisconsin State Legislature right now, it's disgusting, and it's hindering working folks all across the state in those districts. And I hope that at some point they will be able to realize what the true priorities here, and it's to being able to take care of hardworking Wisconsinites.
Well, and I think it's so important for everybody to get involved. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I work too much, I don't have time. It's so important for us all to be involved in an election year like this, because we have to replace the people that are doing that obstruction.
Mm-hmm.
The people that voted to replace our governor, and then he gets hindered by the lame duck session.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the constituents of Wisconsin did not want that, and it's a matter of getting our people involved from the youngest to the oldest, so they understand it still matters to them too.
Wisconsinites as a whole don't want obstructionism. These are people that vote for the person, not the party. These are people that don't want a circus down, whether it's Washington, D.C. or Madison, on either party. They want things to get done because there are real issues, especially in this western part of the state, that need to be fixed. And it's at the end of the day, they're getting played with down in Madison and Washington, D.C. for politics and political gamesmanship. And you know what? I think that the hardworking Wisconsinites deserve a little bit more than that, because you know what? All we have done wrong here is shown up to work every single day, paid our union dues, supported our families, supported our schools, and now we're getting thrown around like political pawns.
Well, plus we also need to make sure Madison knows that Eau Claire West, La Crosse, we're here. Ashland, Superior. It isn't just Milwaukee and Madison.
That's correct. That's correct. We are all Wisconsinites.
So that's one of the challenges I know we have. What steps would you recommend that we take to affect change?
Yeah, I think I look at it as a simple equation, right? At the end of the day, our goal here is to improve lives of working people, right? And how do we do that, right? If you ask 1 million people on the street, you'll get 1 million different answers. So here's one of the 1 million answers that I'm going to give to you. At the end of the day, the strength at the table, the strength in the capital, and the strength, in our community is based off of the market share that we have as a union, as unions and union industry, right? The more people that we have represented under collective bargaining agreement in these industries is a direct correlation to our strength in those places, right? So the biggest thing that we can do to affect change in our communities and with our people and working people is we need to be organizing. We have seen it's, in low union density states, the wages are lower. It's not just because that's magic, right? It's because they don't have as many people under a collective bargaining agreement where we have to sit down with the employer and figure out what's going to be fair and figure out the terms of the game.
Win-win
here.
for everybody.
Exactly. So I think that if working people want to affect the most change, and us as well, the burden is really on the union organizations to get out there and spread the word, and more importantly, listen to the issues that working people have every single day, and then we need to be organizing on that. And as we increase our market share, we will be able to increase our power, have better luck at the bargaining table for union and non-union workers, right? We just need to be raising up the industry standards, and the best way to do that is to be organizing workers every single day, every single night, picking up the phone and talking to people that haven't been talked to in the past, and listening to those issues.
Well, and we need to, with the baby boomers all retiring, it's going to leave this huge gap in trained technical people.
Correct.
And to go to a high school kid and say, don't just look at how much pay this person gets, look at what's all else is part of that job. Like, you don't just go be an electrician because they get paid this much an hour. You look at it as the training, the safety, the union, and what backs it, what makes that whole job.
Absolutely. And the opportunities being endless, right? I mean, especially in the crafts and with the IBEW specifically, if you're a journeyman, if you want to work in Wisconsin for a while, you can work in Wisconsin. And if you want to pick up and move over to Colorado, you're still just as much of a journeyman in Colorado as you are here, under our Missouri Valley Apprenticeship. And it's one of those things where the possibilities are endless. You can do whatever you want to do. If you want to live in a camper and travel around the United States working on power lines,
We got a job for you.
We got a job for you, and we would be happy to have you. So
Good. Well, we're running out of time. That's our program for today. My thanks to our viewing audience and to Nick, who made today's show possible. My thanks also to our people that are working behind our cameras, who give us an outlet for our union voice. And a final note, Labor Talks is on channel 993 twice weekly, and you can also use your favorite search engines with keywords Labor Talks and find us on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in.